Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Security Week's podcast. I am Brian Schleifer, and today we have a phenomenal podcast in store for you. Our guest today is Clint Bodungen, Director of AI ML Engineering at Arcovo, formerly Morgan Franklin Cyber, and founder, CEO, and chairman of ThreatGen. Clint is a U.S. Air Force veteran, author, and globally recognized expert in ICS and OT cybersecurity with deep experience across red teaming, industrial cyber risk, AI, and game-based security training. He is the lead author of Hacking Exposed Industrial Control Systems, author of ChatGPT for Cybersecurity Cookbook, and creator of ThreatGen Red versus Blue and Auto Tabletop, platforms that bring simulation, gamification, and generative AI into cybersecurity education and incident response exercises. Clint, thank you for joining us today on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Some topics that we're going to discuss today are going to be fun, exciting, and maybe even a little have some spite in the background. So we're going to talk about governance. We're going to talk about cybersecurity. We're going to talk about AI. We are going to talk about AI cybersecurity and the integration, some newer technologies, and your work on Mindstone, which is very exciting. A lot of curiosity out there, and really, really excited to get to that and dig in. But first, Clint, I'd like to just take a second, if you don't mind. This is something important. I think it's a little bit different. As a lot of people just want to jump into the technical side, but you get a lot of successful people. And if you think like, oh, I'm not successful, there's a really good book called Gap and Gain, and like celebrating how you got to where you're at. And I think you are a very successful and very well-known person in our community and other communities in the industry. So if you can take a second, just, tell us how you got to where you are now.
I could say the Tom Brady answer: hard work and perseverance, and but quite frankly, probably more out of laziness. But my path is probably not an example people should follow, because I think a lot of where I got my opportunities were from people that just gave me a chance, just gave me an opportunity, probably where they really had no business letting me do some of the things that I did. It also started in a time, the 90s and early 2000s, to where the industry wasn't so saturated, and it was a lot easier to be the one-eyed king in the land of the blind, right? I mean, so I did my work, I did my due diligence. I'm a nerd, I'm a geek. I live and breathe the things that I do. I'm all in or all nothing. I think maybe this is the key, is that because I have so much passion for everything that I do, maybe people just saw that passion and gave me opportunities. Because, I came up through the Air Force, but my first job out of the Air Force was another Air Force veteran who got out before me and brought me over to his buddy's company and kind of got some experience there. But then, I really cut my teeth in my first real cyber company at Symantec in the early 2000s. And a guy by the name of Chad Skipper hired me and gave me that opportunity, also former Air Force. I probably had no business getting that job, but he gave me the opportunity. And so I think it's just down to passion for what you do and good people giving you opportunities. And then it just went from there. And that's just been the theme my entire career.
Yeah. Where did you go after Symantec?
After Symantec, I actually went to be the VP of IT security for Fort Hood National Bank. It was basically First National Bank Texas and Fort Hood National Bank. It's all of that, where they have you can see them all over every HEB and Walmart and in Texas. But if anybody that's ever been in the Army, Fort Hood is pretty prolific. And so the VP of IT security for that. So that's where I went after Symantec.
Wow. So you've worked in like multiple, industries in security. Like that sounds like fintech, endpoint security. And then what other aspects or avenues have you hit prior to getting to where you're at now?
I left the banking industry after about a year, and there's some just regulatory stuff that's like, okay, I don't want to do this, which we'll get into, right? After that, I had an opportunity to interview for a company that was a subcontractor for a major oil and gas company. Again, I knew nothing about SCADA networks, but I was hired to help secure their SCADA network for their pipelines. And I knew nothing about it, but I had such a passion for cybersecurity and knew quite a bit about cybersecurity at that point. And I knew enough to where I fit the bill, what they were looking for, and I got an opportunity. And that was in 2003, I believe. And so 2003, I got hired by this company to do this work, and out of Houston. So I went back to Houston. That was the first time I had heard of SCADA, or before OT was a term, before ICS was a term, before IACS was a term, right? That's where I got started in industrial cybersecurity, and really never looked back. So in 2003, that's where I got. So that was more, I would say, I would call that a SCADA security engineering role. After that, so that company actually ended up going bankrupt or something, pulled everybody in on a Friday and fired everybody.
Oh, wow.
After that, I actually went to go work with another pretty prolific name in this community, Jonathan Polay. He hired me to help him with some training and some pen testing and stuff like that at his company. And then he kind of mentored me. So Jonathan was really my mentor for a long time. And then so that's when I got into the more red teaming stuff, and we had a lot of fun. So, but at that point, that's when I started. That was about 2004, 2005. So we started doing a lot of assessments and red teaming and pen testing and all that stuff. And that's really where the bulk of my career had been up into the mid, I would say 2013. That's what my career had been up until that point. Then let me preface that by saying, or append that by saying, no matter how much red teaming, no matter how much technical work you do, everything is always undertoned or overshadowed by the arc of risk management and governance and compliance, right? So no matter how technical you do, if you're in services and in consulting, that you're always going to have that aspect. And then in 2013, I actually got more into the software development side of things. And, tool development is one thing. When you're doing pen testing or red teaming, tool development is one thing. But I actually got more into the software engineering side of it in 2013. And so, yeah, I mean, that's where my career had gone. Oh, and at Symantec, I was a SQA tester at first, and got to got to write QA tests for the folks developing the IDS systems. And so then I got to work alongside the guys writing the IDS, and got a real passion for like writing network code and stuff. I would say that everything had always, even since the Air Force, everything was always rooted in cybersecurity. It wasn't even called cybersecurity back then, like InfoSec or system security or whatever. I'd always been interested in that. And so I got into that, and everything's been rooted in that, even though it may have been for like, okay, so maybe right now I'm doing pen testing or red teaming, or maybe I'm doing vulnerability assessments, or maybe now I'm doing GRC, or maybe, so, I guess the lesson there is that there's a lot of different areas in cybersecurity for anybody that wants to get into it, whether and there's a lot of different verticals, right? Like you said, fintech, and there's healthcare, and there's oil and gas, and there's all these things that all these verticals. So not only do you have verticals, you have the different disciplines. So GRC, pen testing, red teaming, software development, all security related.
Incident response, all the fun things.
Yeah, exactly. Threat hunting, SOC analyst.
Yeah. So I'm curious, we've talked about this a lot. I know you're very passionate about this, and I just sort of want to peel back the onion layer, because I know your upfront passion, but so what is the view you have on governance, and why do you have that perspective? And tertiary, what would be a resolution? What do you see? So again, sort of your initial thought, why that is, and how can that be improved, and what you could see that we replace it or something like that.
First and foremost, and let me say what I have to say first, and then I'll qualify it. I hate the word governance. I hate the acronyms GRC. Ironically, I'm a major risk nerd. I love probabilities and statistics and risk analysis and risk calculations and quantification, and I love that stuff. I mean, I do probabilistic math, higher level math for fun. The problem with governance is, and by the way, maybe this also sheds some light on it. Politically, I would consider myself to be aligned as a libertarian, smaller government. And so anything when you are dealing with policies and standards and governance. Look, let me qualify this by saying, I think it's necessary. We need laws. We need rules. We need regulations. In fact, my wife says I'm the world's ultimate rule follower. I won't go above the speed limit. Ironic, right? Because I came up through the world of hacking but I'm a major rule follower. Like when I play D&D, I'm a paladin. And so, I'm all about ethics and honor and rule following, but I hate rules. And here's the reason why. Because I feel like too many people develop and create rules without an understanding of why they're creating the rules or what they're creating the rules for or the underlying tech that they're trying to govern. And I feel like I'm going to piss a lot of people off right here, but this is kind of my joke. But for all my GRC friends, take this with a grain of salt and take it lightly, because just know that I've done GRC for a long time and everything that I do. And I've also taught everything. But this is what I say is like, you've all heard the thing, those that can't do, teach, right? So those that can't do cybersecurity, teach cybersecurity. I taught. Those that can't even teach cybersecurity do GRC. And I know the look on your face. I was like, but I'm a governance guy. But look, I don't really feel that way. It's just a joke, because I'm honestly making fun of myself there too. And the reason I say that is because there are a lot of people that get into GRC that haven't actually paid their dues in the field, in the trenches, right? I don't feel like that you are very qualified to govern something. And this is all areas of life. I don't feel like you are qualified to govern something or write rules on something if you haven't had the experience doing the thing. And there's too much of that. And so there's too many lawyers writing rules and standards. And look, I will say this first and foremost, like I have known the committee members of ISA 99 and 62443 for years, all through the different cycles. They know what they're doing. I respect every one of them. They're practitioners. That is the governance I can get behind. But I can't get behind governance written by lawyers, or when you have governance written by practitioners and then it gets legalized by lawyers. And people use governance and compliance as a security checkbox, right? That's another reason why I hate it, right? So the idea behind it, awesome. When it's practitioner led, awesome. When it's done for the right reasons, awesome. But whenever it's done for CYA, cover your apples. When it's done for checking the box to say that, we've done our security, we've done our due diligence, we're good. Whenever it's done not in the name of real security, but just paperwork security, can't stand it. And I think there's too much of that. And I also think that their rules without enforcement are useless. They're lip service. And so I think there's a lot of governance without teeth. Yeah. And so, but people are using. So that's my beef with GRC and governance. I feel like it's a facade. If it was done for real by the practitioners, we'd really have something. But we don't have that right now, except for a few.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you state that, because I completely understand where you're coming from. The one instance that I'm curious from your perspective is, you said it, and I had a podcast where I talked about this, that my joke is, have you done cybersecurity for 20 years? And people that say yes, I'm like, we didn't use that term 20 years ago. And so you hit on that. That was great. It was a great nail on the head thing. So how have you seen that sort of like the integration now transitioning and talking about cybersecurity? So it sounds like, again, you've hit a lot of the different aspects, but system security, and now like system security engineering from like the cyber physical side. But how have you seen that evolution since you've worked with it for so long, going, as my example I used earlier was like, hey, we just need a password. And now there's, all kind of microsegmentation and encryption and all that. How have you seen that progression until now? And we'll jump into AI next, but how have you seen that from the security flow since you started?
I think I'm going to take this answer in a different direction than what I think that you're looking for or what you're anticipating, because there's a difference between the progression of where cybersecurity has gone, right back in the 90s. Nobody knew what a firewall was, right? That's the space between your engine and the compartment of where you drive from a vehicle, right? Or the flight deck of an airplane. Okay, now we know what passwords are, and now we're doing multi-factor, and so I think the problem is where we've gone in technology in complexity is massive massive increase in technology. I'm not going to call it improvement because we're still getting compromised with low-hanging fruit. And so the problem is still the people. Even though we have gained an understanding of cybersecurity as a human race, the technologically equipped human race, we have increased our understanding of threats and cybersecurity, and we've given ourselves all the technology in the world, but compromises are still based off of email phishing and social engineering. I think there's something to be said there. I think it's cool from a technologist perspective. I think it's really cool that we've done all these things and we've increased our technical and technological capabilities and the sophistication of our defenses. I guess maybe from a complacency perspective, we're still where we were in the 90s. Nobody cared about cybersecurity in the 90s. And there's still a lot of people. I kind of feel this way. I kind of feel like there's only two people that care about cybersecurity. There are the cybersecurity practitioners and the paranoid, which are kind of one and the same. But, like my mom, okay, my mom only cares about cybersecurity because she's hyper paranoid. She's always sending me little clips of things and, oh, have you heard about this? Or, have you seen this? And a lot of the times it's hype. It's just, oh, you got to be careful about going to the gas stations because if you're within 5 feet of this, it'll read your credit card because of these scanners I have on there and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, not entirely true. And the likelihood of that happening, Mom, come on. But yet, so she's hyper diligent because she's hyper paranoid, but she'll still get hacked because, she will still click on every cat video that she thinks is coming from her sister. It's the people that are complacent or that don't care that are the insider threat to all of us. And so I guess I'll close by saying that the technological advancements have been insane, but the human capacity for caring about cybersecurity has not changed at all. And I'm one of them. Well, here's what's really interesting. I started when cybersecurity started, right? So I never had an opportunity to be the person that I'm pissing off. But all through your career, it's a battle, whether it's healthcare practitioners or control room operators or a database operator or a developer or a bank teller. They all hate you for doing cybersecurity because cybersecurity is the antithesis of convenience and comfort. Over the years, we've started to create an equilibrium of understanding, but there's still that animosity. You always have the cybersecurity. It's like, they don't understand. They don't understand the risk. And of course, the people that need access to this or want to do the job, they're like, you just don't understand. I just need access. And now that I'm actually more in a software engineering role, but rooted in cyber, I get to see both sides of the fence, but I'm not the cyber person anymore. Now I'm the AI person. And now I'm fighting myself in a mirror. I'm looking at people looking at me going, like, I just need access to this. I literally just need to be able to access my repo so that I can push software and pull software. They're like, well, no, but it has to be secured. I understand, but I need access. And I'm like, this is like deja vu. And so I'm getting that unique perspective. And so I get it. And it's not that I don't care about cybersecurity, because I do, because that's where I come from. And it's not that I don't get it, because I do. But sometimes I kind of feel like I care less about the cybersecurity than I do just needing to get my job done. And it's this big aha moment for me. And so it's like, man, so that's the problem, right? It's because the one technical problem that we haven't solved in 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is now, is we haven't found a successful balance between optimal security and convenience.
Just a quick pause. This episode is sponsored by SecurityWeek, the #1 most read cybersecurity news source and trusted destination for the latest analysis, expert insights, and digital content across the security community. Be sure to check out SecurityWeek's phenomenal upcoming conferences, including the AI Risk Summit in August and the 25th anniversary ICS Cybersecurity Conference hosted this year in Nashville. Whether you're focused on enterprise security, AI risk, operational technology, or industrial control systems, Security Week continues to bring together the people, ideas, and conversations shaping the future of cybersecurity. Now, back to the episode.
I think passwordless security is getting there, and like token, this thing right here, right? Yeah. Being able to just like or Uber keys and things like that. Awesome, So, but we're getting there. But that's what I think the progression of cybersecurity is. We've come so far, yet have gotten nowhere.
Yeah, I think Clint, right? At some point, we're just going to all have something embedded in our wrist, and that's just going to unlock everything. That'll just be. That'll
be nice. Yeah, right. Yeah, that'll be. That'll go over like in a punch bowl.
That's right. So I was curious, Clint, because it plays such an important role. But and I think you have seen the advent, even back in the day from the trend analysis and supply chain, where AI, really stemmed from, right? Started in the 50s and 60s, really slowly, right? Just that aggregation and algorithms, coming up with trend analysis, and now even with like the maintenance side. So, right, they're taking that data and coming in and go, okay, we get it now that we have to replace this component in this approximately every 6 months because we're able to aggregate all this data. And they're just seeing that and they pull that together. And now we've progressed to LLMs and small language models and things that are even so small they can go on Raspberry Pis. And just there's a multitude out there when people think about AI, and then the robotics side of the house and all of that stuff, computer vision, all those things. And so I'm very, very curious to hear how the advent of AI, and now not only the advent, but it's more the accessibility. I mean, we can go on our phones and do ChatGPT and Claude and utilize that. And that's the big thing. It was sort of like, those people that got access to the PCs, the 10 or whatever in the world, were the ones that gained it. And now it's like everybody has this access. And so what they can do with it is astronomical, and we're all learning at speed. How has the advent, really like that evolution of AI, impacted you from the security aspect, and even more, like you said, the functionality and software engineer side of the house?
This is a multifaceted, nuanced answer, because on one hand, we're in a hype bubble right now. We're still in it, right? We've been in it for 2.5, 3 years now, and we're still in it. But all of the things that everybody says AI can and will do is a little overblown. All of the things that everybody says, why AI will be our downfall. And so when I say all the things it can and can't do, for good and bad, right? It's all a little bit overblown. I work with both generative AI, so LLMs, as well as classic machine learning and gaming AI, hours a day, every day. So I've literally been, and so I can honestly say, from a practitioner perspective, I have a decent feel for what it can and can't do, at least right now. And I try to be a predictor, because I try to do my research and stuff like that. But I feel like I have a pretty good beat on it. And so, for example, you have a lot of people that right now are trying to put everything in the LLM bucket. It's not a magic bag of holding, right? It can't hold everything. It can't do everything. There are some things that classic machine learning is going to be better suited for: statistics, analysis, all that stuff, right? That's not what LLMs are meant to do. But yet people still try to get it to do that. And it does some, but it's not going to do a great job. I guess your definition of what great is. But on one hand, it's kind of caused a pain in the butt, because for practitioners, right, now you have shadow AI causing a problem. You have AI causing a lot of security vulnerabilities and just a lot of access. And it's a pain in the butt for security practitioners. But I will tell you that AI is not as capable of causing as big of a threat as a lot of people says it is. There's a lot of stuff on that OWASP LLM top 10 that, to where the likelihood the likelihood of like any of that stuff actually working and getting exploited, and the impact that would result, is so small that AI is not as big of a threat as you would think. but there are a couple where there's a huge threat and could be really impactful. And that's where people should be focusing. But anyway, I digress. I also attribute AI right now, the explosion of generative AI, right? Because AI has been around for a long time. If you think about like when in the 90s, when Linux first hit them, kind of started becoming not mainstream, but, more known. I know a lot of people that were jumping on the Linux bandwagon. They're like, oh, free operating system, it's got Windows and it's got point and click, and this is gonna, down with the corporate, the overlords, screw Microsoft, and this is gonna be revolutionary, and this is gonna end Microsoft, and everybody was jumping on the bandwagon and all these things it was gonna do. Well, who's using Linux now? Developers, server farms, people in DevOps, or network engineers, and really diehard techies and things like that. Because what happened was everybody realized that the hype wasn't all it was cracked up to be. It was a little more complicated than they anticipated it to be. And at the end of the day, it was just still easier to use Windows, right? For the average person. Yeah. And that's kind of where we are, right? And I saw this whenever ChatGPT 3 first came out. And everybody was, look, it can do all these things. And everybody was, everybody's really excited about what it can do and all these different things. And people started falling off really quickly once they started realizing it's like, well, okay, I can use this chatbot to write stories or do all this, but now it's controversial, and now people get mad at you for using it, and so the basic use cases started to fall off. And now the only people, and it took me a while to realize this, because for a long time I felt like, man, everybody knows all about AI. Everybody knows how to use this stuff, and it's going to change the world. That's because I'm in my own echo chamber. I'm surrounded by people who know this stuff. Now I'm realizing that the average person, isn't going to be using AI like I do, a developer. And so AI is essentially going to end up being relegated to developers, product companies, hyper creators, and all these kind of things, right?
Do you think what you would consider like a layman? So and that's probably, I'm not going to do a direct connection, but like my barber or something, right? If I go talk to my barber and they almost use it instead of like Google search. And do you think that people sometimes conflate like automation and AI together? Like they just don't, they think that automation is AI when it's really not, from the LLM strictly. Cause I've seen that a lot, and it's like, I get where you're coming from, and there might be some aspects of algorithms behind the scenes, but they're not necessarily going and checking on a vector database and going that route at all, and maybe not even using a RAG. I mean, it's really that
so
layman against it.
Yeah, I mean, so AI can automate, but automation is not AI,
right? Exactly.
And so I think ultimately that it depends on your use case. There's basic use cases, there's advanced use cases, and market use cases. For me, I mean, it's been phenomenal, right? Because I'm a creator, I'm an engineer, I'm a software developer, I'm a security guy, I'm a musician. It has allowed me to accelerate the expression of my craft, right? Whether that's writing software, writing music, doing art, it has professionally and personally enhanced my life. I know tons of people that it enhances other people's, it enhances their life in different ways, from helping them create PowerPoint slides faster, helping them summarize papers and things like that. Software developers writing code faster and that kind of thing. Now, I'm not talking about vibe coding. Don't get me started on vibe coders. If you already know the thing, it makes you superhuman at the thing. And don't worry, eventually this whole vibe coding thing and people, again, they're going to fall off. People using AI for stuff that they don't know what they're doing or how to use it properly, and they're not getting the good results, that stuff's going to fall off eventually. And eventually you're going to have people using AI properly, or generative AI, and then also machine learning in its proper classes. They're going to be using it properly for proper ways, and it's going to all balance out. But my wife pretty much hates AI. Just a little, eating dinner at the table is a little controversial sometimes. She hates AI. She thinks that it's cheating, and she thinks that it's stealing and it's plagiarism and all these things like that. And but she definitely likes the income it provides. But so, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. But the whole point about whether it provides opportunity or not, it's just about your viewpoint, and your perspective, and how you see it, right? If you see it as an aggregator, an accelerant, to the things that you already do, I think that's the proper use case. If you use it to be something you're not, to do something you don't know what you're doing, or to replace people who do know what they're doing, or create or whatever, I think there's some ethics involved there. But then, yeah, I can see why people don't like it or hate it. But I think ultimately used for the right reasons, it'll change your life.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Clint. I appreciate that. I use the analogy, right? It's, to me, this is very, another revolution, if you will, like an industrial revolution, agricultural revolution. Like it's a big change that is providing something to a lot of people, right? Whether that's direct or indirect, like you just said, because at the end of the day, there's a big population change over different demographics, right? We have the traditional generation, the silent generation, baby boomers, millennials, Gen X, and that the amount of people on the earth has shifted and changed. And so some industries they're getting forced to become more efficient, whether that's producing more food for more people, or certain aspects and skill sets have reduced because they're not done in schools anymore. And so how do they learn quickly, or what can they help with? And so I agree too, it's not the entire person. And I said this before, it's part of the workflow that become more efficient, right? So you can do process mining and figure that out. So again, thank you very much. I think that was very well done and wrapped up. Now I want to step into something I know you're extremely excited about and passionate about, and I want to talk about Mindstone. So we had a chat a long time ago as you started to progress this development and creation of Mindstone. So if you can, I'd really like to just start with some basics of like, hey, this is how I came up with the idea. I just started playing around. Then it became this. And then I want to do some use cases afterwards as far as how it's helped you with ransomware, and the memory side of the house and where you see it going. But if you can, just a little bit of background and how it got to where it is now.
Yeah. And so, first of all, let's just say that so the proper term is Mindstone Agent. I don't want Disney coming after me, because yes, the Mindstone idea was the thing
Gotcha.
in
Ultra.
Jarvis/Vision
Yeah,
in Ultron.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that's where I got the idea from for the name. Disney, if you're out there, it is a free open source community project, so I'm not profiting off of it. So yeah, first and foremost, it is free, open source. And I do want to say before I get into the idea, what's the purpose of Mindstone before I get into it? Number one, I just want to say up front, the purpose of Mindstone is to democratize the use of agentic AI for serious use cases, not just to be your personal assistant, not just to automate your life and all that, but the purpose is to really democratize the entirety of an agentic workflow, agentic process, and building this for if you want it to be a personal assistant, fine. But if you want subject matter experts, if you want things to help you, like with the use cases that I did or whatever, and make it easy, right? Make it accessible. So that was the whole purpose. So here's how it came about. And by the way, this is an exclusive. This is the first. Nobody's heard this story. So you're special. I was using OpenClaw first. So back then it was called ClawdBot, CLAWD bot. And then Claude, as in, or Anthropic, had a problem with that. And then he had to change the name to, change it to Moltbot. And then it became OpenClaw. I was using it. I started realizing that there were gaps back then. And I think a lot of like some spinoffs. So Hermes Agent came out not too long after that, which is not based on OpenClaw. And by the way, for those of you that are in the technical realm, so both OpenClaw and Hermes Agent, Mindstones, a few others, they're all built on what's called Pi, the Pi agent, pi.dev, pi.dev. I'll explain a little bit more about that. But it wasn't giving me some of the things that I needed. First and foremost, I using like things like Claude Code every single day. it irritates me to every time I run out of context window space, I have to go and start a new session or compact this session, and I still have to tell it what I've been doing. I have to remind it of things and forget things. And even the best bots, I mean, the best agents out there, right? The best LLMs, still just you have to tell it. So the lack of memory, the fact that, and some people like the fact that, it's a completely new session every time with a new context window, but I want the best of both worlds. I want to be able to say, well, yes, I'm starting a new context and a new session because it's a new subject, but I also still want it to remember its mistakes that it did on this other thing. So I wanted it to learn as it grew. I wanted my agent to get better with experience. And so there's no agents out there that did that. And Andrei Karpathy came out with a memory architecture that's basically a wiki-based kind of thing. And that has gotten very popular. And I've used a bit of that to go into this, but it still wasn't getting me where I needed to get to. I also, it's one thing to have that memory, but I also don't want to have to tell it all the time. Okay, I told you this 3 days ago, go look it up, right? I wanted it to know when it needs to know something. So another use case, another thing that the other things I needed it to do was, the thing about OpenClaw was that you can talk to it on your computer. You can talk to it on your phone, Telegram or Discord and all these different channels. And every single time I went to a different channel, it's a different version of the agent, and it doesn't remember what I was telling the other agent. So long story short, I wanted continuity. I wanted continuity of memory. I wanted continuity of knowledge. I wanted continuity of experiential growth. And I wanted continuity of identity across platforms. I wanted to know that if I'm talking to this agent on one platform and I move over to another one, I can continue that conversation. And I want to know that if you made a mistake 3 weeks ago on this one thing that was completely irrelevant to what we're doing now, but it was still coding, you still made a coding mistake. I want you to learn from it. I don't want to have, that was the biggest pain in the ass, is me having to tell over and over again, stop doing this particular thing. And I would put it in the Claude file, I'd put it in the agents file, no matter what, it still tends to make the same mistakes over and over again. And so short of fine tuning my own model, I wanted to get past that. So that's what happened. So I basically started rewriting a lot of aspects. I figured out through trial and error how to create a memory architecture to where not only could it remember things, but it knew when it needs to remember things, when it needs to recall something naturally. Like as part of this conversation, as I'm saying something, memories are popping up and it knows. And started rewriting it to where it would be the same session across platforms, across channels. When I got to a certain point, and I started testing this with friends and community, I got to a certain point that it got too clunky. Basically, I'm modifying the code of something that exists, and I'm shaving off the corners of my square pegs to make them fit into that round hole, and it was getting pretty clunky and getting pretty nasty. So I started all over. And then I did what everybody else did. I started with PyDev, which is a raw basic harness. So a harness, if you think about an agent, is an LLM call, right? Typically. So if I'm just using an LLM, pop in my question, go to LLM, I get an answer back, right? A chatbot is able to keep that persistent transactional conversational history going. Then an agent has the ability to use tools, web search, document reads, but then it also has the ability to reason. So there's a reasoning track. So these are called React agents, reason and act. So it will say, okay, the user just asked me to do this. I think I need to search the web to do that. Okay, let me go to use the web tool. Let me go do that, right? That's an agent. Using tools, using reasoning to make decisions, double checking itself. What makes that work is called a harness, okay? Becomes a harness when you start building loops. So think of like if you're playing a game, there's a game loop. The thing that you do, okay? So a workflow or a loop adds functionality and a repeatable process to an agent. So Claude Code, OpenAI's Codex, Gemini CLI, these are all harnesses. Py.dev is a harness. Now there's a few open source ones. Py.dev is one of them. Py.dev is a very basic harness. Out of the box, it comes with the agent, the agent loop, a reasoning agent, some basic tools. Search the internet, read and write, use command line. That's pretty much it, like 4 tools. And then on top of that, you can then tell it, okay, there's other things that they have skills use tools, but but you can build integrations. Hey, I want it to talk to me on Discord. But the cool thing about pi.dev is you can actually tell it to improve itself. Hey, I need you to have a skill that can create PowerPoint slides. And it will build that skill to create PowerPoint slides and all the stuff like that. Another thing that these harnesses have out of the box is the ability to connect to whatever model you want to use, whether it's a provider, a frontier provider like OpenAI or Anthropic, or a local model on your computer. So anyway, it gives you the framework and you build on top of it. So anyway, long story short, or long story longer, that's what I ended up doing. I ended up building Mindstone with all the pieces that I needed from that. And so the memory architecture that I developed is called layered continuity architecture. And so it employs a lot of different layers to create this system of memory and identity continuity.
Okay. So Clint, I wanted to ask you this before we get into the use cases that you've mentioned previously. So how does this affect like resources, right? So my logical brain tells me I can't store this memory from every single person using ChatGPT, because again, that's why, they're building data farms for more processing, not necessarily memory. But if you added memory to that, we're talking just some astronomical compute and storage power that's going to go along, because not only are you storing it, now you have to go like process to pull it out. I mean, it's going to be huge. So how does Mindstone, or is Mindstone affected by that resource constraint? And if not, how is that possible?
First of all, and this is also, I'm going to answer this in a way that also talks about privacy and security. If I'm using OpenAI or Anthropic, whatever, and I'm making inference, my agent needs to go out to the LLM. So it goes out to the LLM, makes that inference, brings that back. None of its memories are out there. Now, data retention from inferences is a different story from your provider or whatever, but all the memory is kept locally on the computer it resides on, okay? As a resource example, so my very first agent, in fact, it was the agent that I started talking to and asking questions, and literally helped me come up with the ideas to build out the LCA and to build out Mindstone, has been running since early February, beginning of February. And, so we're talking almost 6 months now. The memory of every single conversation that we've had is stored in its memory. And I'm talking about in the way that the conversations work. You have a user assistant system, all the assistant messages, all of the user messages, and the entire thinking stream, the reasoning stream. That's all saved. Every memory that it wrote, every journal that it wrote, every document that it saved, that's all stored. All of it. That is then vectorized. So first of all of that since February right now is at about 300 megs. That's it.
Wow.
Because it's all text, right? It's just all text. And it's just straight up raw text, like not Word docs, it's markdown, it's raw ASCII, whatever. Now, the secret of how it can recall all that and remember all that, it doesn't go and do standard searches or whatever. That is vectorized in what you would think of normally as a RAG, retrieval augmented generation vectorized database. So all that data is put into a vector database. Subject for another time, but for other people. But look up the mechanic. If you're interested, look up the mechanics of RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and embeddings and vectorized databases. But so all of that then is vectorized. So that's how it's stored. And I mean, so you're looking, 6 months worth of daily transactions, daily conversations, daily memory saves, everything. You're under a gig right now. Over time, that's going, and to be fair, like I know what the performance is like after that amount of time. I have not tested this, for years and years worth of memory and data. So I don't know yet. I'm still learning, but that's where we are right now. And the performance is still fast. I can tell you that, and the way that it recalls that, there's an experiential weighting recall formula. And so whenever it recalls that, it takes into a lot of things like how recent is this memory? How pertinent was this memory to the subject and to the current context? And did it really help something or whatever? And so that it recalls that, automatically injected into the conversation before it goes to do inference. That all happens fast. It's instant. The resources right now seem to be reasonable, the resource usage, and it's all local.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that was always when I started reading about it. So you have posted on LinkedIn about Mindstone, which is great because you've provided a lot of free resources to read and videos to watch, which, I consume a lot of. That's how I learn, watching videos. So I do appreciate you putting those out there.
Created by AI too, by the way.
No, it was great. I like the voice. One of the things that stood out to me that you posted was how it helped you, and I believe your company ThreatGen, overcome a ransomware attack. So I'd like you to walk through how it helped you do that and some of the highlights.
So first of all, like the way that it got in, the original ransomware attack. So there was a cPanel 0-day that was announced the night before, and I actually didn't. I mean, we don't have a SOC or anything like that. I saw it the morning of. I didn't see the alert. I saw it, and I'm like, oh crap, we have this version, everything like that. So I immediately get on the server. I am my own DevOps guy. I started kind of looking into what do I need to do to patch this? And I'm looking at it, and I immediately start to see my files get hit with a .protected extension. Yeah, that feeling, like if you're on a company call and you you mean to say something mean about somebody to your buddy in back channel chat, but you realize you just posted it into the group chat that everybody can see, and you have that, oh crap, cold running feeling through your body. That's not that I've ever done that, but I imagine that's what it would feel like. And so that's the feeling that went through me. It was cold, like, oh crap, and then next thing you know, it's like all of a sudden, like I couldn't SSH in, and then I start seeing new SSH keys being created. I went to one of my agents, because these agents I've had running for weeks, months. They helped me do my DevOps stuff. I literally went to my DevOps agent. I had two agents. I've got my security agent, which is the SOC agent. Ironically, my SOC agent had literally just sent me an alert that night before. It picked up on the 0-day, gave me an alert based on what it found, and I actually had an alert from the agent before I noticed the email from cPanel that of that alert, and he was basically telling me, it's like, patch now. So I went over to my DevOps agent and my security agent and communicated with them. I was like, look, we just got hit. I didn't even really have to instruct them or tell them what to do. The DevOps agent and the security agent immediately started coordinating. So I have a communication channel called Synapse, and that's how my agents can talk to each other and coordinate. They immediately started coordinating, dividing up responsibilities on what they need to do. The DevOps agent, who, they have the incident response procedures. They know, ironically, a lot of the stuff happens. They know this stuff because of Auto Tabletop putting incident response procedures and stuff into the games that I build, and the tabletop training platform that are doing everything. So they know all this stuff from that. They immediately started telling me, it's like, okay, well, don't turn off the box. Okay. We're immediately, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check your, do you have any backups? Do you have any save points? Do you have any checkpoints or whatever? And they said, okay. So they immediately went and looked, and they together verified. It's like, okay, well, here was your last clean backup. All right, we're going to go inspect that backup, or we're going to look to see if there's evidence of that backup being compromised. And they looked at it and said, okay, here's your last clean backup. Okay, let's stand this up in another VPS. So they went and they stood it up on another VPS. It's okay, now let's go ahead and isolate that other box. They didn't turn it off, they isolated. So then I had one of my other agents went and started doing a forensics investigation on that box.
Wow.
While my other agent was spinning up the backup on that VPS, and then was like, okay, now we got to get now you're stood back up, you're good to go. So now here's how you're gonna get this stood back up. Here's how we're gonna get DNS cut back over and get you stood back up. But then they said, well, but before we do that, we have to make sure they did an investigation for root cause analysis, because they're like, well, as you know, as soon as you stand this back up, if you have the same vulnerability and you do a DNS cutover, the threat actor is going to have a way back in. So then they had to go and do a root cause analysis, figure out what the most likely attack path is, do a little bit of threat hunting to try to see where they got in and where they were. They figured it out that it was that cPanel vulnerability. They got that box secured, patched up. We did the DNS cutover. One agent continued to do the forensics investigation and collecting evidence off the compromised box, while this other box got stood up, cut over, verified data accuracy. There was no data loss. They verified that there was no data exfiltrated. They got it locked down. They're continuously monitoring for other, to see if it's it continues to be safe to this day. And it took about a little over 5 hours, that entire ordeal. I know it may sound fast, but they were very methodical. They were very, I didn't have to do anything and lift a finger. They did everything. The only thing that I had to do were the things that they couldn't, like actually clicking in Azure to shut this box off or to stand another VPS, or if there was multi-factor authentication that they needed resolved, I had to do that. But they did everything. It was actually fun. I sat back and watched it all happen. Like after the initial reaction of like, holy crap, I just got hit with ransomware, watching them work and do everything. It was just like, because they had knowledge of my systems already, the AI. They had knowledge of how to recover from the ransomware. They had all this knowledge. They just did it, and it went from a crisis to being fun and watching this unfold. The very next week, my DevOps agent helped me migrate off of Azure to a completely new hosting provider. They did all of my services, my websites, my databases, my licensing servers, everything, customer databases, everything. Did a complete migration of all that from Azure over to a new service provider. I did it for cost and everything, and just for a lot of reasons. Took less than 2 hours, 0 data loss, 0 downtime. Wow. And I didn't have to lift a finger. So
that's huge. That's crazy.
And it all happened literally because, sorry to cut you up, but because of that memory continuity. Because they had the memory. I didn't have to go in and explain to them, here's my server address, here's this. Okay, here's what's going on. I literally just said we got hit with ransomware. They started talking to each other. They already knew what was going on. And because they had that continuity of weeks of experiential knowledge, they knew what to do.
Yeah, that's talk about a great use. Okay, well, great as the outcome from a use case, not great.
Yeah.
Happened to you. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was thinking in my head, you had that cold feeling, and then it was like they brought this warm blanket for you. Sort of like,
they really did.
Mindset. Well, that's great, Clint. So we're getting close to the end of time here. I do appreciate it. I mean, we've hit a majority of the things that I think we set out to discuss today. And again, I do appreciate your time and your perspective coming on. I do want to give you, there's 2 things. One, I want to give you a moment just to sort of provide any kind of closing comments or thoughts. And at the very end, I do have a fun question to ask you. So I'll go ahead and let you do the closing comments.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And enjoy talking to you as always. And this is a little more formal than what we normally do. But no, this was fun. It's a good opportunity to talk about this. But, my closing comment is simply this. I think, temper your passions, subdue your passions when it comes to thinking about the technologies. Yes, be cautious. Yes, be diligent and vigilant. But be careful about your claims. Be careful about fear-mongering. Keep everything within a realistic, calm demeanor, and make sure that your claims are accurate and to an appropriate level and commensurate of the actual threat that you're claiming, right? I mean, for example, just non-security, right? There's a lot of people that are making a lot of speculations and claims online about why Fable 5 and Mythos was banned, what the fallout's going to be. In one specific, I see people saying that Fable 5 is re-released, but it's nerfed. You're not gonna be able to use it to write code, or it's not gonna be the same. Well, I know for a fact that they don't know what they're talking about because I'm testing it right now. I literally have open up on my desktop right now, testing use cases to see if Fable 5 is still as good as it was, because I used it for 3 days solid while it was available, and I'm testing the use cases, and I'm comparing it to other models right now to see, is it nerfed? Is it still as good? And so people just need to be careful about making claims based off of hearsay and hype, and think about the actual technology. And I think that that's in the cybersecurity realm as well. I think people need to be careful about the claims that they're making. Fear mongering is not awareness. Fear mongering is cluttering up people's ability to respond appropriately, and with the appropriate level of due diligence. For example, it's already difficult to prioritize your risks, to determine where you're going to spend your resources because of the plethora of vulnerabilities and threats and risks that are facing your organization. So give me hard data. Give me realistic data that's going to help me determine if these threats are actual viable threats in my organization and feasible, or if it's just more chaff that I have to sift throughout my prioritization in my mitigation playbook, right? So that's kind of my thing is, I think AI can help you do that, but give it a fair shot, stay diligent, and be fair about the claims that you make, because you're not just making false claims, you're hurting other people's ability to respond to real threats.
That's good stuff. So Clint, final question, just for fun, just take a second. Maybe you already have it like this, but what is your favorite movie of all time?
Okay. So people ask me this a lot, actually. It depends on, I don't think I have one single favorite movie of all time. I think it really depends on the time where I am in life. And I think my answer will differ over time. But I can tell you right now, my current favorite movie of all time is probably The Martian with Matt Damon. Yeah. And I think because it's one of those things that exists within. I love forward thinking. I love epic movies, and I love movies that talk about the possibilities rather than the detriment. I would rather look towards a positive future than a negative future, and I like movies that show the human ability to overcome extreme odds using intellect. And so that's why I like movies like Castaway. I like movies. There's just a lot of them like that, but Passengers, freaking love Passengers. But with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. But I define my favorite movie as that movie that if I see it on TV, I will stop and just watch it, like Shawshank Redemption or any Tom Hanks movie or whatever. But I would have to say, like, yeah, right now, a movie that I will just watch to have on background, a movie that I'll watch over and over again. So that used to be Forrest Gump. After the Forrest Gump, then it became The Internship. Comfort movies, right?
The Internship, and then now, with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway?
No, that's The Intern. The Internship, I think. Yeah, The Internship. Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, Google.
Got it.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Really, dude? You have
no.
Hathaway and
No. So it was Forrest Gump for a long time, because in Forrest Gump, when I was working in the PAX terminal in Saudi Arabia in the Air Force, that was the only movie you had on a VCR, and it ran over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so I just really got to the point where I could quote that movie, but then it became a comfort movie. So then The Internship, another one, like at the end of the day, had a hard day, I'm turning that one on, or I'm having it in the background. So, but right now it's The Martian. So
no, thank you for answering that question, Clint. Again, thank you for coming on Security Week's podcast, and
thanks for having me.
Until next time.